Hello, my name is John. Today we are having a look at the F-86 Sabre. The Sabre just has been released for the DCS series by Tech. The Sabre itself had its maiden flight in 1947 and went into series production from 1994 to 1956. It was a Cold War fighter jet, a very early fighter jet. It was mainly fighting, or was mainly opponent to the MiG 15 in its times, and obviously back then there weren't any computers available, so the systems are very basic and it's a very hand-fly aircraft. And you will first see that in the startup it doesn't need very much, especially compared to the newer aircraft like say the A-10. Okay, we're first doing the startup. We'll first call the ground chief or the ground crew, and we ask for external power.
Chief, turn on the ground power.
And hopefully Chief is doing that for us tonight.
Copy.
And after getting external power, we'll just do a few steps. We'll just flick on the engine master switch. We'll put the battery starter switch into starter, and then into battery. And this engages the start cycle, and we just wait for the RPM of the engine to spool up to 3%. Then we'll put that throttle one notch forward. We're waiting for about 6% now. We have that. We will put it to idle. And after doing that, we'll just wait until the engine spools up. The key to do that is the home key. You adjust the throttle by that, and once it's on idle, you can adjust it as used by your thrust levers at home. And the engine is running up. And we can now ask our ground chief if he could kindly disconnect the ground power again.
Chief, turn off the ground power.
Okay, and after he's doing that, we'll have a look outside, and as you can notice, the aircraft still has its speed brakes extended, and we will just retract them. And having a further look, you'll also want to extend the flaps. That's done by pressing the F key, or whatever keybind you might have for that. And this concludes the startup of the F-86 Sabre. I will now taxi to this runway over there and have a takeoff and have a short flight to see how it handles. And what you want to keep in mind during taxi is that the nose wheel only can be operated or turned in a huge deflection if you hold down the nose wheel steering key, which is the S key on your keyboard. So keep that in mind and hold that key down, else you won't make any turns. And the Sabre is needing quite a bit of power to actually break away when standing. As you can see, it's about 65% right now, and during the turn it needs that. And afterwards, taxiing out straight obviously it doesn't need that much power anymore if you want to keep it a decent speed. So we'll reduce the power a bit, and left control and C does close the canopy, which is quite a good thing for flight. I'll just gently taxi to the runway there. Flaps are fully extended, and the speed brakes are retracted, and that concludes basically the pre-startup or the pre-takeoff checklist. I just want to make sure we get that center line there nice and tight. And once pretty much aligned, we want to roll a few meters forward on the runway, else our nose will be still pointing towards the side, and this won't be very good for takeoff. So after rolling a few meters ahead, I know the nose wheel is straight, and I can just go ahead and gently move the throttle forward, and just put it to the full forward stop, and we will see engine spinning up nicely, and the aircraft is accelerating at about 100 knots. We will just gently pull back at the stick and wait for the aircraft to rotate and lift off. And it's about 100. We will just pull back on the stick and let the aircraft do the rest. And we're having a positive climb rate right now. A re-land on this runway is not possible anymore, so we'll retract the gear. We're having a nice climb out speed at about 140 knots, and we're climbing with 2000 feet a minute, which is quite decent. And after gaining some altitude, let's say about 1000 feet, we will retract the flaps, and we will basically in a clean configuration, and we'll be ready to go onto our flight. And 1000 feet, retracting the flaps, the nose will drop down a bit, so be prepared for that. And on today's flight, I don't want to climb much further than 2,000 feet, and we will just do a right-hand turn here as well. And we will just do a small traffic pattern, or a bit of extended traffic pattern if you so will, and land back at the airfield. We just have taken off. These indications on the window I think are for aerobatics, and probably also maneuvering. Don't find these too often today on new planes. And as you can see, it's or as you can't see it right now, but as I show you, the Hawk is quite it's quite agile to stick and put. So if you just slightly move the stick, you'll suddenly be climbing up and or descending. It's very, you have to get used to it. It's very a fine aircraft to control, similar to helicopters basically. You also need very gentle inputs. And after this short leg here, I'll turn into the downwind. And we're about 300 knots. It will accelerate faster if you let it to, but I'm trying to keep the speed back. I'm trying to arrest the climb. And here the downwind leg, this will do. We're a bit far out, but for the purpose of this video, this is okay. We just go ahead and start to descend a bit and reduce the throttle. We don't want to reduce it to full idle, because then a beeping warn tone will sound, and I think this warn tone is because if you reduce the throttle to idle, the generator is kicking out or is disconnecting, and after a few seconds you will lose power. So we're just wanting to put the throttle quite far back, and now we'll go ahead and just open the speed brakes, and we wait for the aircraft to decelerate. Just beam the runway there. Probably would report downwind right now if we would have any ETC. And currently we're 230 knots, but we want to go down to about 85 knots before we extend the flaps and the gear, as indicated by that yellow mark on the speed tape. I can retract the speed brakes again, because we're about at 200. This will suffocate for right now. You can see the aircraft is quite pitching up a bit, obviously due to the low speed. This should get immediately better once we extend the flaps, and we will just make the turn onto the base leg. Right now we're pretty far away from the airport at this point, so we can fly a long base leg, bringing us a bit further out still, so this should suffocate. And at this point I want to extend the flaps, and there's no indication for that. I think the only way to know where the flaps are is either to check the lever, but that's not much of a help, because it's like, it's not a 3-position lever or anything. It's more like if you pull the lever back, they will extend it. If you push it forward, they will retract. So the only way to check the actual position of the flaps is to look out the window. But this is, I think, common for all the aircraft. And the red light flickering there basically, I think, is the radar. It does have a radar, it just doesn't have any displays as used from modern jets. It's just a radar that's detecting if there's anything ahead or not, and in this case it's picking up the ground, which is similar to the P-51 rear warning receiver that also will pick up the ground, and I think operates under a similar concept. We're just flying at about 150 knots. During final approach we want to have about 140 knots. I just fly that down to the runway and touch down gently, hopefully. And there's the airfield. We're quite far enough out, so we'll make a bit more of a turn to fly actually a 90-degree base leg. And once we return to final, we'll extend the landing gear. Obviously you can extend that earlier if you want to reduce speed, because it obviously gives a lot of drag, but this is not necessary right now, so we'll hold off the gear. I'm just having a bit of power here, because you don't want to descend too much here. Don't want poor citizens down there being disturbed by our noise we make. So yeah. And the runway is coming up, and we'll just do a small turn onto the final leg. And at this point I will bring down the gear. And the gear is extending, as you can obviously hear. And now the 3 yellow lights indicate the gear is down and locked. So gear down and locked, flaps extended, speed brakes retracted, landing checklist complete. And overshot a bit the turn, being distracted by the gear, but obviously that far out this is not a problem. can't correct that easily. And you want to keep eye on the speed as usual. About 150 right now. During the last couple of 100 feet, you want to be at about 140. And yeah, as usual during approach, which always does about well for this aircraft, is 500 feet per minute descent, and keeping the speed on touch, and changing the speed with pitch, and changing the descent rate by thrust. So, as usual, as you can see, the aircraft is very agile to control inputs, which is obviously to expect from an aircraft from that era, especially an aircraft in this size. And I guess you want that for a fighter aircraft, don't you? So let's reduce the power a bit. We are about at 140 knots. We'll just extend the speed brakes a touch. This gives us a slightly higher engine power setting to maintain the speed, which in case of a go-around makes it easier to, or faster to spool up the engine to full power. So this is a trick you can do. It gives you a bit of an advantage in a go-around. You're a bit high on the high side, but you can correct it. Descent rate is a bit higher than usual, but still it's in the norm, I would say. And the runway is coming up. And just above, we want to arrest our descent and getting us a bit in a flare and touching down as gently as we can. But still, firm touchdown is better than to float down the whole runway. Oops, that was a bit too firm in my opinion, but will do. We extend the brakes fully and put the throttle to idle. Trying to maintain the center line down there. Don't do any braking just yet. Just keeping. Let me just start to do a gentle brake. It's quite obviously without any systems. Just realizing my left rudder pedal failed, or my left brake failed. I'll use the W key. The run was a bit shorter than I anticipated. This should not be a problem for the Hawk, but I'm very sorry about my left. I think my left rudder pedal disconnected on my left brake axis, but we managed to stop on the runway, and we'll just retract the flaps and shut her down. And don't forget about the to hold down the S key or the nose wheel steering key, else you don't make any turns. Taxiing in this thing is quite a challenge to me. As I found this is the most complex thing to do yet, but we'll just hold it right here as it will suffocate for our purpose. And we will just switch it down in reverse order. We'll put this to off. And we will move that engine lever back to cut off. And the engine, as you can see, fuel flow cased, and this cage is shutting down, and the engine RPM is slowly dropping, and we're putting the engine master switch. We'll put that to off. And basically that concludes our short video today. I hope you liked it, and I will making a bit of a weird sound here. Oh, this is probably using up the remaining battery power, I see. Okay, good to know. And I hope you liked this video, and I will do some more videos if you'd like on the weapon employment, fighting against other aircraft with guns and air-to-air missiles, maybe also dropping bombs and engaging ground turrets. Thank you very much, and fly safe.